got a great film to play, just
Hello? Have you ever snubbed a lady?
we had a technical problem.
Are we on?
Yeah, we're on there.
Can I swear? Shit!
Welcome to Crunch and Roll, a podcast about the side of the radio industry that most people never hear about, featuring some of its most interesting characters. My name is John Fox, a former radio presenter. I've done shows, breakfast shows on 96.9 Viking FM, 210 FM, BRMB, of course, and Signal 1, plus a little bit of work on BBC Radio WM. So now you know my CV. Hopefully you'll agree I'm qualified to ask my guests the questions that we're all dying to hear the answers to. Now, picture the scene. You're in the studio. It's a normal day. You're doing your normal show. You're feeling a little bit peckish, so what you do is you order a pizza, just to munch on between those beautifully crafted links. Then, through the glass, you see your new bosses. A couple of guys called Richard and Ashley. Then they enter the studio at the same time, the XD rings. It's the receptionist, just letting you know that your pizza's arrived. What do you do? Well, that's not what today's guest Paul Hayes did. There's loads more cracking stories from his career on the radio in the UK, Dubai, Canada, including how he completely rearranged a former boss's house, much to his fury, and a memorable evening out with a boss who was trying to persuade him not to leave. Now, just before we start, just our regular reminder that if you enjoy the podcast and you are a listener that loves the Crunch and Roll, then we are always eternally grateful for any support that you can give us on Ko-fi. And thank you very much to some very special recent supporters, Darren Leatham, top guy, Roger Luxton, thank you very much, Simon Green, top guy, and also Anthony Timpson as well, very generous. Thank you very, very much to you all. Just go to ko-fi.com/crunch and roll. Okay, let's crunch and roll. Oh, yeah. Paul, how are you?
I'm really good, thank you, John. Nice to see you and hear you.
You said before we hit record that you were a little bit nervous.
Yeah, massively nervous. Yeah, hugely. Building up to this for a while, it's been on my mind, and you start thinking of the stories, and then you start thinking, should I say that one? Like, is that a good idea? And you just start going through it all in your head. So yeah, really was getting quite nervous about this.
I've got to be honest, there's a lot of people that say they get nervous about doing Crunch and Roll. And we were just saying before we hit record that I think it's because people don't want to miss parts of their career, because it's, well, let's be honest, we've all been doing it you're still doing it to such a high level that, you don't want to forget anything that you've done over the years, do you?
Yeah, it's trying to put your mind back and remember all the people and all the moments, and as you say, not leave anybody out who's been significant or helped you or been a great person. It's that, and do you know what it is? Also, I think sometimes you get used to talking in a room on your own, and anything that's slightly different to that. Yeah. Like I did a presentation thing about podcasts, and it was a really small audience, but it again absolutely scared the living daylights out of me. Like that intimate thing, or just something that's a bit sort of left or right of what you usually do, can sometimes put the fear into you. And this is, I guess, a bit different, isn't it?
Well, I think it's different because I'm asking you the questions, whereas normally you're asking the questions, aren't you? That's
true. And yeah, you're right. Yeah, maybe that's got something to do with it. Yeah, in fact, it's probably got a lot to do with it, hasn't it? Well, what's going to come next?
Well, do you know what? It's lovely to have you on. So thank you very much for being on Crunch and Roll.
Well, it's an absolute honour. I mean, the people that you've had on it, I love listening to it. I do some long journeys, and it's my go-to thing for long journeys. And it's been brilliant to hear, friends and people that you know of in the industry. It's been great.
Before we get on to where you started and where you're from, where do you live now then, Paul?
I live in East Yorkshire now.
Do you?
Yeah, I live in sort of Viking territory. And there's people, James Pykos I told him earlier today, I was going to do it, and he said, ask Foxy about the sausage rolls at Viking and bumming fags off the newsreader. Those are the two things he said. And I haven't heard those.
Hey, we'll leave that for my episode, I think.
Okay.
Whenever that may be. I don't think I'm important enough. Well, where are you from originally then, Paul?
I'm from Sussex originally, and lived there born there and lived there till I was about 19, and then went to university, and then left university after a year because I got offered my first job. So yeah,
Is it true that when you were 15 years old, you set up your own company to do wedding discos?
Yeah. How'd you know that? I did do that. Yeah. Yeah, me and my friend Tom. So I worked in Tesco's for a bit. And then me and my friend Tom thought, I don't know where that idea came from, but we just thought, right, let's start doing some mobile DJing. And what was good is that because we started it at that age, I mean, we were doing pubs at the age of 15. I have no idea if anybody knew how old we were, probably not. But we managed to get all the 16 birthdays or the 18 birthdays, and then sort of started going into weddings and the bigger stuff like that. So it was quite a good start, actually. It was a good way of doing it.
I had my own mobile disco company. Sound So Good was the name of the company, and I charged £25 for a night. Can you remember how much you charged at 15 years old?
It was probably about 50 quid, maybe.
Was it? Okay.
At that point, maybe. We had to split it between two of us, though.
Of course.
We called it Power Discos.
Oh, nice.
And for some reason, and I have absolutely no idea why, I just thought it would look cool. We had a stamp done with a logo. I don't know where the logo was designed. It just had a W that sort of stood out for some reason. And we had a stamp, and we used to basically stick the stamp onto all the CDs. So it was like some sort of, CD library. It looked official, but nobody saw it. So I have no idea why, but that was something we did. But that was a good start. I have no idea how you knew that, but yes, I did.
Is it true that you are a bit of a chef as well and you hate microwaves?
Yes, that's absolutely true. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I did a couple of cooking courses when I was in London, actually, haute cuisine courses, which was like all the dinner party food. And yeah, it has. Ever since then, I just cook every single day and became a little bit obsessive about food. And we're currently on the How Not to Die cookbook. We've gone almost vegan or vegetarian. Like
Wow.
We've cut out meat quite a lot. So I'm making my way through that at the moment. Yeah, but yeah, I love cooking, and that's definitely a passion. Yeah.
So tell me, where did your passion for radio start then, Paul?
You've probably heard this story a million times. I think many people have mentioned it, and I don't know where it comes from. I mean, that I'm interested in. Like, where does this fascination with radio actually come from? I started probably around 10, 11. Loved Steve Wright on Radio 1. I remember that being one of the first shows that blew me away, and loved that. And you do all the recording, on it, and listening back and playing the jingles back and all that stuff. So I went through all of that, and I have no idea where that comes from. It's really weird that so many of us have a very similar story. Where does that come from? Like, what makes you like that? The stuff that other people don't necessarily pick up on. It's weird, isn't it? But I loved that. And then I thought Radio 1 was it. And then I heard Capital one day. I was just sort of flicking around and came across Capital. And that was incredible, with Chris Tarrant on Breakfast. And again, the jingles and the whole production and the feel of it was amazing. And then started flicking around more and sort of came across Invicta, which was in Kent, and I could pick that up, and Southern. And you just started to listen around a lot and just record a lot and just pay attention to this. And I have genuinely no idea what it is that makes you, like it or the reason why. But so many of us, I think, have a similar sort of start in that way.
So tell me about, because I'm looking at your CV in front of me now. Your first gig was at Neptune Radio. Now, I've made it no secret on Crunch and Roll that I'm not the biggest anorak, and my Southern radio knowledge lacks slightly. So can you tell me about Neptune? Because I've not actually heard of that one.
It was one of those really small, I think they were called Sally's. So you had Invicta, which sort of covered the whole of Kent, and then they broke it down into much smaller areas. So I think there were 4 or 5 in Kent. There was one in Canterbury and one in Thanet, I think. And there was this one that covered Dover and Folkestone, which was Neptune. And so I was at university and can't quite remember what happened. I think I emailed them. I was just emailed. No, I didn't email them. I didn't exist, did it? I must have written to them.
You'd be a multi-billionaire, Paul, if you'd have emailed me.
Yeah.
You came up with email. This is great.
Definitely didn't email them. Must have written, and got a phone call from Mark Browning, who was running it, and he said, "Come down." I think I did a week. I had a week off from uni and went down and did a week there. And then he offered me a job, and I thought, well, I was at university doing media studies, so I've been offered a job doing what I'm there to learn to do, so I might as well go and do the job, which I did. So I went down to Kent, I think I was 19 then, 19, I think, and started with that. And it was a really good start because it was half like journalism, half sort of news reading and then half doing a show. And I probably decided that I preferred doing the show to the news stuff. So that was more the direction I started heading in, and then started sort of doing overnights on Essex FM and some stuff on Q103 in Cambridge. You know, that era where you're trying hard to make it work and you're just on Red Bull and driving around the country at all hours and just that. Yeah.
I'm so pleased that you mentioned Q103 because my dad lives in Burwell, which is just outside Cambridge. And I have such amazing memories. And this is long before I became a presenter. Just the amazing memories of driving to my dad's and staying there and having a shower. And he used to have a little radio in his bathroom and listening to Q103, which was a great station, wasn't it?
Yeah, I had relatives in Peterborough, somewhere near there. And I actually remember in the depths of my mind somewhere listening to CNFM, which I think it was before it was Q103.
Wow.
And so weird sort of, again, memories with that. So it's one of those stations that I had some kind of affinity to before I started there. I loved Q103. I had a really good boss, Craig Morris, and I only did Saturday afternoons, sometimes cover during the week as well. But it was great. And I loved the GWR thing, actually. I think that was probably what I needed at that point, was actually to learn those basics.
Yeah.
And, you know, because I was at the point on Essex where, I mean, I dread to think what that sounds like. I was sort of trying to be the other people and just needed to rein it in and just talk normally and just, you know, do those basics a bit better. And actually, so Q103 was brilliant at that time. And I think really sort of got me on track.
So tell me about your move, because the next station you moved to in 99 was Southern FM. I mean, that was a huge station. That must have been a big move for you.
Yeah, that was hometown station. So, you know, that covered the home area. That is a special thing, isn't it?
It's amazing. That's amazing.
Doesn't really get better than that, does it? And I'm proper nervous about that before the first show. Saturday Breakfast was the first show. And, you know, because you've heard the station so much, and then you're there and you've got the production in front of you and you're talking over those ramps that you know really well, and you almost know the production off by heart just because you've heard it all. So yes, it was absolutely phenomenal going to Southern, and a really, really good boss. Like one of those people in your life that you will always remember. It was Andrew Jeffries. I don't know if it's a name you've come across.
Yes, blimey, yeah.
Have you worked with him?
I had a meeting. I had lunch with him for a station that he was looking after in Leeds, because he was known as the Duracell Bunny, wasn't he, Andrew Jeffries? Because he had so much power. He just wouldn't stop moving, would he? It
was funny. I was writing down these people and a few notes earlier. I've put Andrew Jeffries, energy was the word. But I mean, he was amazing. You can imagine he comes in. I mean, Southern, when I was growing up, was classic hits, you know, and it was always a very professional station, but it wasn't necessarily the music that I was into. But by the time I got there, it had moved on and it was today's best music. And, you know, it was a lot hotter. The music was good. It was chart. And Andrew coming in and basically from day one saying things like, right, it's a sunny day. I'm not going to do an accent. It's a sunny day. Let's go and broadcast on the beach just for the sake of it. Like, we've got Brighton Beach here. Let's just go and broadcast on the beach. And that kind of energy was amazing. And just like that whole kind of, we can do anything. We can do anything. Let's mix up the production. Let's do this. Let's do a chart on a Saturday afternoon. And just stuff like just came in with energy and enthusiasm. And it was absolutely brilliant and really good life advice from Andrew as well. This stuff that, you know, the way somebody might just say something to you and it sticks with you forever. And he was one of those people that there's plenty of things that I learned just as a person, as a human, like from him. You know, pick your battles. I'll always remember him saying that to me. I've got no idea why he said that to me. I can't remember that. I don't know whether he was telling me to do that or whether it was just advice, but that really stayed with me.
So how long did you spend at Southern FM then, Paul?
I think it was a year and a half, and then it was up to Manchester, Galaxy 102.
I should mention as well that alongside doing Southern FM, you do a few shows on Power, which is, again, another beast of a radio station as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I was doing all kinds of stuff. I was producing an evening show. It was quite a unique thing, really, called Terry Garrigan's Last Buster Whitehawk.
Catchy title, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he was a comedian in Brighton, and he had this show called Brighton the Musical, which he used to perform at the Brighton Dome, and he was giving away frozen chickens, and just he was nuts. But a great experience to work with him. I mean, there were times where it was fraught. He was, sometimes quite difficult to work with. But generally, we had a really, really great relationship. But that was quite a unique thing to be involved in. So I was producing that, and then I ended up doing the Late Show after that. And then I started doing Sunday Breakfast on Power as well, which came out of nowhere and was awesome, because I know you've talked about Power before as one of those stations, and it really was. I mean, that was another station that, again, it's sort of childhood memories of going to visit relatives in that area, hearing that station and being blown away. And again, knowing the production before you get there and just knowing which jingle's what and how it all works. And the music was brilliant, and it was, really tight, and just that was a great station. Even just doing that one show a week was brilliant.
It's funny you should talk about knowing the production, because I remember when I was offered weekend overnights at Viking, and I was so excited, and I'm sure you did the same. You practiced the tagline: best music, best variety, 96.9 Viking FM. And then on the weekend that I got there, they changed it. I was like, no.
Oh no!
I was like, please. Because it sounds so...
I've been rehearsing this for years.
Yeah. Don't do that to me. I was so excited. I can't remember what they changed it to. Best music, best variety to something else. I can't remember. Well,
Power changed while I was there as well, because it was the South's #1 hit music station, which I really liked.
Yeah.
And then it became non-stop Power FM, which was cool, but I loved the hit music station.
Yeah, that is cool. That really is. Well, let's talk about your move up north. So you moved to Manchester, you go to Galaxy 102. Can you tell me how that move happened?
God, that's a good question. How did that happen? I think I emailed them. I think I just got that itch of, when you're 19, 20 and you're just like, oh, that looks cool. Like I could go and do a city thing. And that was quite a big move, really, because that was my first time going up north. Into Manchester, and there were quite a lot of changes while I was there with management, and like we moved buildings, went from Portland Street, I think it was, to the Triangle, so into new studios, which was good. I mean, it was good. It was a good time in Manchester, and Sam Sniber came in with his jingles. If you remember them,
no, I don't.
They were different. They were unique. They were the ones that sung about what was it? Dance and R&B #1 radio. Have you ever heard those?
No, I haven't. You need to tell me. I can't work out from your face if it was a good thing or a bad thing, Paul.
Oh, good. Okay, well, should we leave it like that? It was a unique thing. It was a unique thing. There were a few difficult times near the end. Me and Sam, it's a weird one, really, because I don't think we particularly got on while he was the boss there and while I was there. Like it didn't particularly go great. But since then, I've met up with him in random places and it's all been great. And in fact, I even helped him to get a job somewhere. So it's all fine now. But there was just that time. It just didn't quite, I don't know. Yeah. But I think he'd know that anyway.
When you were at Galaxy 102, was Nixie on breakfast at that time?
Yes, he was. Yes.
He? So, I mean, everybody that we've spoken to who worked with or knew Nixie only had wonderful things to say. Did you have the same experience?
Absolutely, yeah. He was very welcoming and was lovely to work with. And, I was really pleased he was there, actually, because it was a really, big thing to be moving somewhere completely different, didn't know anyone at all. And not just in Manchester, but for quite a long way, really. I didn't really know many people at all up there. And he was very welcoming. And he was a great guy and great on air. And I'm really, really pleased he was there when I was there.
What show did you do on there then, Paul?
I was on mid-mornings, actually, so I was on after him.
And we've spoken to a lot of people on Crunch and Roll who have spent time at Galaxy, who have such fond memories of that brand. Have you got the same memories?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was awesome. I think that was part of the reason why I wanted to do it as well. And I remember when I first started there, I can remember texting someone. I think it was Andrew Jeffries, actually. hang on, was text around then? 2001? Just about, wasn't it?
So beyond your times, you really are, Paul.
Oh, I sent a message via pigeon to Andrew Jeffries. And I just remember saying, I'm playing Dr. Dre on Daytimes. And it was just like, wow. Because that was if I was to pick like a music genre, that would be it. Like dance, R&B, like that kind of stuff is, hip hop, that kind of vibe is what I love. And so it was just heaven to be playing the music that it was. And the brand was awesome. As everybody has always said, it was really a very, very special brand. So it was 2 years in total with Galaxy, because it was Manchester first and then it was over to Leeds and 105 and the network Late Show. And that was Andrew Jeffries again, actually.
Yeah.
So he'd gone up to Beat 106 and then he'd come back down and he moved me over from Manchester to Leeds. So I worked with him a second time, which was great.
Was David Lloyd part of that as well? One of my former bosses?
He was.
Was he, yeah?
Yes, he was. David Lloyd was MD, another fantastic person. I mean, it's brilliant when you look back at some of this stuff. And, I know other people have said this as well, but I do feel so lucky with the people that I have worked with. They've been absolutely brilliant. You look back at some of these scenarios and you think, wow, I mean, Andrew Jeffries, David Lloyd, these are brilliant people to work for. Really, really lucky.
I always felt with David, he was so powerful that he could just walk into the studio and just say, brilliant. And that was enough to really egg us on as a team, just to give us the confidence to carry on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really a great, great person. I respect him so much with what he says about radio even now. He'll say something that just absolutely seems to sum something up in almost in a word economy way, and it just really, cuts through. It's clever. It's a good skill.
Is this going out, or is it just in our headphones?
The hamster's fine.
It was a technical problem. You heard something on air you shouldn't have done.
Oh, yeah. So from Galaxy 102, you then go in 2003 to TFM. Just tell me about that move, because that for me, it's a strange move, that.
Yeah, well, I got let go from Galaxy. Mike Cass came in and wanted to put Dave Kelly on the evenings. So I think there were two shows. It was Alex Pepper on evenings, and then I was on after Alex.
Right.
And then they got, I don't know about Alex, whether I think he might have left actually to go to Radio Air. I'm not sure. But it was just down to one show. So Dave ended up doing 7 till 11, I think it was, but yeah, Mike let me go, which is weird because of course, usually you'd think, maybe it'd be, you'd hold a bit of hostility towards somebody who does that. But I was still living in Leeds and I went to some Galaxy night out because my flatmate still worked at Galaxy. And I got chatting to Mike and I ended up by the end of that night going, oh my God, I love this man. This man's amazing. Like we hadn't really had a chance to actually
get to know each other.
He just come in and said, right, you're off. So I haven't really had a chance to chat. And I loved him. And ever since then, really close and, had a really, really good relationship. So, but he did at that point get rid of me from Galaxy. The funny thing was at that point, there was actually quite a lot going on because I was in the running for the top 40 on Radio 1. Mark Goodyear was leaving and there were obviously other people in the mix as well, but I'd been phoned up by Radio 1. I'd done a pilot for Capital and I'd done a pilot for Kiss. And I remember speaking to my brother and he was joking about it going, oh, wouldn't it be really funny if none of them came off? And I was like, yeah. And then he said, and you got fired. I was like, oh my God, it's exactly that's what's happened. Exactly what's happened. So yeah.
I'm trying to work out which one would be my favourite one out of the Capital, Kiss, or Radio 1. Which one would you have preferred out of those three?
God, that's a good question, isn't it? I think just the sheer profile of the top 40 on Radio 1, It was still it was 2003, I think that was. Like that would have been pretty epic. But you know what? Any of them would have been great.
That's incredible that your brother guessed it. I mean, what a guy.
Yeah, thanks for the faith in me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell me about TFM because again, we've been doing Crunch and Roll for so long, so we've had a lot of presenters that have pretty much covered every station. And again, people have got fond memories of TFM. What was your time there? What show were you doing?
I was doing mid mornings. Lots. Again, when you look back on it, at the time, I think if I'm completely honest, I was just really struggling with the fact that one minute I was going to be doing these other things.
Yeah.
And then I was, in a sort of what was to me a random place. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Like it was a hard time, if I'm completely honest. But, there were some brilliant people at TFM. And again, you look at sort of who was there at the time, and Kath Ellington, who is the MD, is amazing. I love Kath. Colin Patterson was the PD, which there is a Colin story. I don't know. I haven't heard from him for a very, very long time, and I don't know if he actually still holds a grudge about it, actually. But it was, and you know what? There are times when I think to myself, was that like really bad? Or was it funny? Or was it just really bad? I don't know.
Tell me. It's a great tease. Tell me.
There was a producer called Rick, and he was quite up for his pranks. So I came out to the car park one day and he sort of covered my car in cling film. And so we went at a party at Colin's house, and Rick, I think most people had gone and we were still there. And Rick said to me, that's right, Colin had to go to drop somebody home. So me and Rick were there in the house, and Rick just said, why don't we move some things around and see if he notices? But this kind of, there'd been a lot of drink and this kind of escalated a bit. So once we got started with it, we might move like a picture like to a different wall. And then, the microwave moved over there. But because he took quite a long time dropping this person off and we were quite drunk, by the end of it, basically, we'd rearranged his entire house. Like everything had moved. So he came back and I was like, the next day I woke up and remembered it and was like, I'm probably going to get fired. He might fire me. But he said, you've got to come back and put it all back to where it was. So, yeah. So we had to go back the next day and put it all back.
God, that's all.
But it was like,
you had to go back and put it all back.
Yeah. We had absolutely, like the whole house had moved. Like everything was in a different place. Oh. So, yeah. But so I don't know whether he still talks to me a lot.
We should definitely tag him into this episode just so he can get his right to reply, I think.
Yes, I'm pretty sure he'll remember it. But Scott Makin was at TFM as well, who I love, and I think generally speaking, everywhere you go, you've got, there's benefits to everywhere, isn't there? You always meet somebody and end up being lifelong friends, or you learn something or something. Like every experience, you can take stuff away from, I think.
Now you spend a year at TFM, and then your career really goes up a league, doesn't it? Because you go to Heart in London, which was, Heart was just a beast of a station. Can you just run me through how that process worked, how you went from TFM to London?
Mark Browning had gone from, he was at that point at Heart as deputy PD, and I think had put me forward to Francis Curry, who was the PD. And I'm just trying to actually rack my brains to remember exactly how it happened. I think Francis came up to Leeds and we had a really nice champagne dinner. And he offered me, I think it was weekends. I think it was just weekends initially. And then he came back to me a bit later and said, actually, it's going to be evenings and weekends, Monday to Thursday evenings and weekends. And it just sort of got better and better, really. But it was a bit of a weird time because that obviously London for me was a big deal, maybe being from the South, but it's like it was always the goal. Yeah. And the first sort of time around that time, weirdly, I'd done a promo for Bam Bam for Friday Night Kiss. So that had gone out on Kiss. So I sort of got the Kiss being on air on Kiss thing. And then Capital, I literally signed the contract for Heart. And Rick Blacksell, I think it was, who said, can you do this show whenever it was? And I was like, I'm literally just signed for Heart. So weirdly, that Kiss and that Capital thing that didn't quite happen. And then suddenly it all sort of starts to bubble away at the same time. And I'd only done a promo for Kiss. I wasn't going to be on Kiss. But it was just, interesting that was actually the first sort of on-air exposure in London. But so I went down to London, pretty nervous about that. I mean, that was, it felt like scary. And in fact, I asked, before I started on evenings, I said to Francis, can I actually do a week on overnights just to ease myself in, because I didn't really want my first link to be that big news intro at 7 o'clock in the evening, like where it's all timed out and they've got drum rolls and whatever else going on. So I did a week on overnights and then started on evenings. But yeah, at that point it was just literally, London's Heart 106.2, and it was more music variety. And I'd gone from, quite recently dance and R&B to Whitney Houston, and it was effectively sort of disco and ballads really at that point, rhythmic AC it was. So it was quite a contrast, and I had to learn it really, the format. It took a while
I was going to say, I mean, how do you, because you've switched your format so much, haven't you?
Yeah, that was a little bit hard to feel like I had the right tone when I started on it. And I think it took probably a couple of months. And then there was one day where I remember Mark said to me, it was off the back of Macy Gray, I Try. And I remember he said to me, "Oh, right, that's it. That's the tone, that there."
Really?
And from then on, I actually got it. It was weird. Yeah, it took a bit of time. And listening to, Toby was brilliant at that format. And I remember being super impressed. I was on the M25 and listened to a lot of him. And that helped to kind of hear what he was doing and head in that direction. But it did take a while. Yeah, it did take a while to adjust to that style. But I mean, that, Heart at that point, I mean, it was just brilliant. Like the team was awesome, and we were always out, all of us. There was a members club on Shaftesbury Avenue that we used to go to. And I remember them joking about it, saying, "Oh my God, if that burnt down, Heart wouldn't exist anymore." Like it was one of those, like we were all just out all the time. It was a really good vibe.
I do want to talk about that because, there's no dismissing some of the stations you've been on already are huge, but working in London is so different. And I've asked many of the guests who've been in London the same question. How does it feel different being in London? Because I mean, for many, that is the ultimate dream, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it did actually, I'd say. I think just the sheer, it's not to say that other places aren't professional, but I was quite blown away. I mean, Toby was a good example of just somebody who I really admire for how professional he is. Like he's just like, he can be out the night before or whatever, he could come in, but he's just so great at being good every day, and just that consistency and the professionalism. He's a star at that. And so it was great to be surrounded by that kind of atmosphere, I guess. And, Francis, really, really clever guy. I mean, that's another scenario, at Heart, it was Steve Parkinson, who was the MD, Francis, the program director, Mark was the deputy. I mean, again, it's like, it doesn't get much better than that. These are epic people, and people that are really intelligent and, really go deep into, like, you'd have a presenter meeting at Heart, and it was detailed, and it was always interesting, and there'd be something that you'd really get to take away. For example, how listeners might consume stuff better depending on what their favoured auditory sense is. So whether you were to say, I read this today or I heard this today, might actually have an impact on how people consume that information, depending on what their preferred or their more powerful senses. So it's really clever stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was quite, I was grateful for that experience and working with those kind of people. It was absolutely brilliant. And then again, as everything does, it sort of moves on, and it was 4 years under Chrysalis, and then Global bought it.
I want to talk about that. So Global come in. How was that for you? You nearly spat your coffee out there, Paul.
I did, yeah. There is a story, and a few people do know this one. I don't know how many people know. A few people do, and it is a Richard Park story. And it is true. Like, this is what happened. I mean, I remember. So Global bought it. I was doing the evening show, and I don't know if you know the old Bramley Road studios, or if you've seen a photo or anything, but there's sort of the two main on-air studios, and they've got glass in front of them. So it's floor-to-ceiling glass in front, and you're looking out onto what they called the bridge, which was like sofas and like a kind of chill-out area. And then in the far corner, if you're sitting at the desk, in the far right corner was the desk to basically, the door to go out down the stairs or to get the lift or whatever. So I'm doing the travel news, but of course you can see anybody who's coming in to the bridge. And I'm in the middle of doing a travel news, and I just look up and I see Richard Park and Ashley walking in. And well, whatever was going on in the travel news, there was nothing else to report at that point. Like that's it, nothing else. My voice, I think, must have gone up about 5 octaves. And it was just like, yep, that's it. That's the travel, hit the out. They come into the studio. Lovely. And I still can't quite believe I did this. Basically, the XD goes while they're in the studio. So Rich and Ashley, they're having a little chat. I'm nervous as hell. And the XD goes, and it's the receptionist downstairs saying, "Your pizza has arrived." So, John, what would you do in that scenario? Would you say, "Okay, thanks very much," put the phone down and just kind of not reference it?
That's exactly what I would do.
That's what everybody else would do. What I did was say to Richard Park and Ashley, "Oh, I'm really sorry, my pizza's just arrived." And Richard said, "Oh, well, I shouldn't do the accent. I'll jump in and do a segue for you," is what Richard said.
No.
And I thought, oh, this is amazing. This is great. Yeah, completely. I mean, yeah, he wasn't going to do a segue for me. But do you know what? Do you know what? It wasn't a problem. I think, when you're just really nervous and you're like, just one of those head in hands moments of like, what on earth did I do that for? That was, for some reason, I didn't think it was an option to leave the pizza guy waiting. I mean, heaven knows, just bizarre. Oh
yeah. You spent a couple more years at Heart on the Global, is that right?
Yeah, so it was basically while the network was beginning to expand. So it went from, London, and then it was going to be Birmingham and Nottingham coming in. And I remember in one of the meetings where they were sort of talking about this networking thing. And I mean, most people had done some form of networking before. So I'd done Galaxy. There was networking, GCAP, it existed. And I remember them starting to talk about the sort of networking coming in, and the show was going to be on in Birmingham and Nottingham. And it wasn't at that point, I think we didn't quite realize how big the plans were going to be. But I remember thinking, but you can't network at that time because it's got travel news, on whatever, 20/7 or whatever, as if that's going to be a problem for this big strategy. Oh yeah, there's travel news on a Friday at 20/7. But that was the initial sort of part was Birmingham and Nottingham. And then I can't remember how long it took for it to start expanding out further than that. There must have been an acquisition, obviously, of GCAP after that, I guess. Yeah. And then it just started to, in fact, I remember running into you at 210 I think. Yeah. It was still 210, wasn't it?
I remember the rebrand. Yeah, I remember really annoying Toby Ansis when he came, because he did. We talked about this with Andy Bush on his episode, but when they rebranded 210 and all the the GCAP stations, he did like a royal tour, and as Andy Bush said, it was as if he had like the bishop's hat on, as he kind of waved to people.
Right.
And I had an intro, a crunch and roll off essentially with Toby, but I got my producer to adapt the songs. He always, because he's so slick, isn't he, on air?
Yeah.
He kisses the vocal, but I got my producer just to adapt the song slightly, so he always lost. But you could see he was getting redder and redder and redder. I thought this.
What, you took out like 3 seconds?
Yeah. So it just kept crashing the vocals, and I could just see he was getting more and more pissed off. And I was like, and that I reflect on my time, and I think perhaps sometimes I just annoyed people. I'm like, well, I know I did, but that was one of those times I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that to Toby, because he was the king at the time, wasn't he? I was like,
and he's a lovely guy.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, some of those radio pranks are always good, aren't they? Replacing hotkeys with something else, and with a duck sound or whatever it might be. But yeah, Yeah, it was a funny old time, wasn't it? But I remember, I think I came down to 210 and did a few afternoons or something when it was still 210, and then the heart. I mean, did people sort of hate the I don't know, did they hate the network? Like, you always feel it's so awkward, isn't it? Because you're coming in and you're on that show, and then it's awful that people are missing out, as it were. But
yeah, I think it's happening now, isn't it? You know, at the BBC, or it's happened recently at the BBC. I think it's just really tough, isn't it, for people that who weren't at your level. You know, you've got these people coming in and networking and taking over the station, and you know what it's like. Every station that's on your CV, I guarantee I'd pick out every one, and you have some kind of love for that station. And it's tough, isn't it? Because you know that it's going. 210 FM was going, and I met my wife there. I've got so many fond memories of living around that area, and it's like I knew at some point I was going to have to move, and that's what's hard. You know, it's we've talked many a time to many people about, you know, that there's never been any kind of care put in place for presenters who
it's true,
who get the boot and get moved on, and it's like it's so true, and it's not until you leave the industry you reflect on those times and you think, actually, that did affect me. You know, I left Viking, I left BRMB, Signal, and all these stations, and 210, and it's hard. You know, and I'm sure you have been through it. It's tough, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really hard, and you know, it obviously it changes when you've got kids. It just becomes something that you just can't. It's different. You just can't play around with that kind of stuff. You can't just pack up and move kids once they're in school. But you know, even I mean, the toughest time was when Heart came to an end, and I was living in Wimbledon, and I think I'd been in Wimbledon for 6 years, and you know, and even then, and that was back in 2009, 2010. And even then I was sort of knocking on the door of Magic, and there was nothing there. And there was nothing. And actually that was the first time where I was like, oh my God, what the hell do I do? And that was, you know, quite a while ago, really. And that's when I went to Dubai, because it was like, there isn't anything. And it's hard because, I mean, you know, at that point managed to rent the place out. But you know, it's quite a moment when you think, oh my God, I literally can't, this isn't going to be replaced. And, you know, now even more so hard.
Well, I'm really interested in the next two stations in your career, because as you say, you moved to Channel 4 in Dubai.
Yeah, what happened? I got to Channel 4 and the music was all over the place. It was a bit weird. I just couldn't quite understand it. I was like, what are we doing? Like 1 minute it was a sort of David Gray remix, and then it was a chart song. So I just happened to say, like, this, it just feels a bit all over the place. Anyway, I went out there just to be a presenter and basically to just sit by the pool, but then somehow ended up being assistant program controller and taking over the music, and probably should have just stuck to being a presenter and being by the pool, really. Yeah, that would have been a bit nicer, really. But I think we managed to do quite a good job on it. I mean, it just felt to me like it needed to just be completely brought back to like a neutral, like just a starting point again, like just get the strap line sorted, play the hits. And I started sort of, you know, listening and looking up playlists of Kiss in LA and Z100 and Capital, and sort of combining sort of, you know, we didn't have research as such, but you get a vibe and you get a feeling for what's doing what and what's going where. And so we tried to just, you know, narrow it right down, hammer out the hits and keep it tight. And I think it worked quite well with Channel 4. Yeah, I mean, it's not Dubai, it's Ajman, which you may have, I know Rick Horton's been on and a few other people have mentioned Ajman. And there were bed bugs where I was living, which was a bit gross. So some of the sort of some of the sort of personal living there was a bit like, isn't quite the Dubai I had in mind, you know. But it was cool. It was a good experience, and what it did actually is it made me realise that I quite liked being overseas somewhere, and it kind of fired me up to go, right, where's going to be next? I want to go somewhere else, and is it going to be New Zealand? And I went to New Zealand and met a few people, and then fired off some stuff to Canada, and it was Canada that came up, and you know, great. That was. I think Dubai is good for like a year. I felt anyway. For me, it just felt like, okay, a year feels like probably about the right amount of time here. a great place, and I'd love to go back. But it's to live there probably about a year felt right. And then it was off to Canada pretty much straight away. I had to come back to the UK for a bit, and then went off to Canada.
Well, this is the bit I'm really excited and intrigued about. So you went to the beat in Montreal. I mean, so you got in touch with them. They were interested. They signed you up. Simple as that.
Yeah, I'd applied for quite a lot, and it took a long time. And actually, I remember, it's funny the things you remember, isn't it? I remember with the beat, I'd emailed them, and I thought to myself afterwards, I've sent the wrong demo. I think I had like 2 demos, like an AC one and a chart one. And I'd sent them the wrong, I thought in my head I'd sent them the wrong one. But it was also the last one that I was going to do. It was a little bit like that finding gold in the river thing. Like, you just keep going, and eventually, and it was very much like that, because I'd given up, because I'd had nothing back for probably 6 months of trying and applying for quite a lot. And so I'd given up, and then this one came off. They knew of Heart, which helped. So they either had heard me on there, or that at least they knew of the brand. So that helped a lot. And they just took a risk, and they just said, yeah, let's do it. We're changing, because it was Q92, and they were going to move into being the Beat, so a new brand. They even had the Heart jingle package, so that was a bit weird to be playing like re-sings of that again. Yeah, but that was a brilliant station, and again, brilliant people, and really happy 2 years there. Like, they were all awesome.
How did an Englishman settle down, on air? Did they accept you?
Yeah, mostly they did. Most people, I'd say probably really like the English accent over there. There are some words that you have to watch because they literally don't understand. I remember the guy who was on before me came in one day and said, what's a jumper?
Are you kidding me?
Like, yeah, because it's like sweater or like, and then trash instead of bin, and just some of those words that they just don't use. So it sounds really weird they don't probably get it if you say it. And then those words started to sound really twee to me when I'd been there a while. It was like the bin, like, and it just sounded really twee to be saying it. But there were a few like that. I mean, I think they understood most of it, and I think they generally quite liked the accent. It seemed to be. It was weird because I got recognised quite a lot in Montreal, based on the voice. Literally based on the voice. Like, I'd get off a bus and somebody would tap me on the shoulder. There was a guy in a pub who started kind of staring, and I was like, "What the hell is this?" And he was like, "You're that guy." That doesn't really happen. I don't think that's generally happened in the UK, but I guess you stand out quite a lot there. And of course, now there's a few more people that are in Canada as well, and making it work, which is good. But it was a brilliant experience in Canada.
What show did you do out there?
I did evenings, so I did Monday to Thursday evenings. I do sometimes question why I came back. It was 8 till 11, Monday to Thursday. And so I had Friday off, Saturday, Sunday, and most of Monday. And my brother lives in New York, so I was able to, it's only like an hour flight, so I'd get a flight on a Friday morning and then come back Monday afternoon. Not every weekend, but quite a lot. Yeah. And then, do the show Monday to Thursday. And yeah, I look back at that and think, God, that was quite good, wasn't it?
That was great.
That was quite good. What did I do there then? But I'd been away for 3 years, and I just felt like coming home. But I'm not sure. Yeah, sometimes I do sometimes think I should have stayed there. But Montreal can be a bit tricky in terms of, there was a moment where I thought, because it's predominantly French speaking and it's Quebecois, so it's like a sort of farmer French, so it's quite specific French. And they were giving me lessons. I was having a French lesson every week in the radio station. And I'm not great with, I was getting somewhere, but I think it was going to take quite a long time. But what I realized is that in Montreal, I was completely tied to that radio station, partly with the visa. But if I wanted to stay there longer, then I'd have to get like a permanent residence or move it on a bit. But if I ever lost my job at the radio station, I wouldn't be able to work anywhere because I didn't speak French. So that was a bit of a moment where I was like, well, I can't really, it's going to be a difficult one to say I'll be here forever. If I don't know, it just felt like there was going to be a time limit to it. And yeah, so that was partly the reason for leaving. But they did try to keep me, which was very nice and very sweet.
Well, you move from Montreal to Leeds next. You go to Radio Air in 2013. So that was your decision. You decided that enough's enough in Canada. You want to be able to say jumper, let's move to Leeds.
Yeah, I was just ready to come home. I mean, there was a guy, Andre, who was the vice president of programming in Montreal, and he tried so hard. It's so bizarre when you think about it now, and so lovely. But he basically said to me, "Right, I'm going to take you out. We want to keep you." And I had no idea what he was talking about. But we went out and we got to this car park, and he basically got out and took out a wad of cash. And this guy who's like, in a suit and smart and running this drive, he said, "We're going to make it rain." And I thought, well, that sounds really weird coming from you. But he did. He literally, we just went strip clubs, like just crazy, memorable stuff. And I still said at the end of it, no, I do need to go home, but I really appreciate this night. But it was bizarre, really, but lovely that they tried so hard.
I've got to say, I admire you even more that somebody actually said those words, "I'm going to make it rain." Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's when it's somebody that you least expect to say that phrase. It almost sounded ridiculous, but also almost a bit like scary. Like, oh my God, who is this? Like,
When you said he pulled something out of the boot of his car, I thought you were going to say a rifle. You are staying.
Right.
You are staying in Montreal.
Yeah. That would have been, that would have worked. And let's be honest.
We're having a party. Oh, yeah.
So let's talk about Radio Air. So you moved to Leeds. Many people who we've had on Crunch and Roll who talk about Radio Air talk about it as, let's say, poison chalice, perhaps. The station that you can't hear even in the car park. How was the experience for you?
It was okay.
I think you're just too nice. That's what it is.
Maybe it was okay. I mean, it was Ewan McMorrow.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Was running it, and I loved him.
Yeah.
And he was brilliant. Like, and if anybody, I'm sure there's been plenty of people that have said that about other people going into that building. If he can't do it, like nobody can. But he was great, and so it was a nice environment to work in that sense, working with him. And yeah, the station, I mean, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because you're playing generally the same music as other stations in the group. You've got similar or the same production. So what is it that feels different? And yet it just does. Like if you go and do a show on Hallam or, somewhere else, it just does feel different. Like Hallam felt great. And Radio Air just didn't feel at that point great. And it's hard to define what it is really, because there were good people. I mean, Scott Macon was there again when I was there at Radio Air. He was on after me. And so it was good people. Rob Dowell was breakfast producer. He was in there. So yeah, I don't know what it is that, I ended up leaving early actually, but magic sort of started happening and they started changing things. That's right. Owen Ryan was there, and they'd said, "Oh, we're going to change weekend shows." There was like one day on a Saturday and Sunday, one show on a Saturday and Sunday, and we're going to change it to whatever. And I was like, "Okay, I don't want to do that because it will ruin my weekend." That's what I sort of thought. And then Magic came up, and there was something at weekends, and that worked better. And so I ended up actually leaving a bit early, but they were good to me really at Radio Air. Like Owen was good, and Ewan was great, and it wasn't awful by any means.
So obviously the next move for you is Magic, and previously in this episode you've mentioned Magic. Was Magic always an aim for you? Is that somewhere that you really wanted to work?
I loved Magic. Yeah, I remember being at a friend's house and it was on in the background, and I was like, it was Angie Greaves who was on. Oh, she's great. Like just like I don't know what it was about it. It was just something about that brand, and I quite liked the fact that at that point that it wasn't like overly branded as well. Like, I heard Angie sort of just giving out the frequency, or just, it was quite relaxed in every way. And I just really liked it. And I'd been in touch with Stevie P. In fact, I came back from Canada with the purpose of meeting with Stevie P. And it didn't quite happen at that point. But then it happened December 2013 it was like just before Christmas was the first one. I loved it. It's funny, even in Mapping House, there was something about the studio that had an atmosphere, I thought. It was quite a small studio, and it wasn't like an impressive studio, but I know it sounds crazy, but there were pictures on the walls, and it just made it feel quite homely. And it just had a nice feel to it.
You know, you mentioned Mapping House there. That was an incredible place, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there were rats, but you know.
Yeah, apart from that.
Yeah.
I remember Tim, was it Tim? We called him Tim Spoonbender, but was it Tim Spoonmaker? Was the big wig when I was at EMAP at Viking, and there was a fish tank as well, wasn't there, in Mapping House? Was it? You remember that?
Yeah, I do vaguely remember that. Yeah, was that in reception?
I can't remember. I just remember the reception because you come off that busy street. I don't know London at all.
Oxford
Street. Yeah, sorry. And then you go into that tiny reception, and then you kind of go upstairs, you did go upstairs, and then there was just this. You had Kiss, you had Magic, you had all these big brands, and it was like, don't know, it was somewhere that I always looked up to. It was an amazing place in my eyes. Yeah,
it was good. It was great, and then it wasn't that long after that the move to Golden Square. And well, obviously up till very recently, it was Golden Square pretty much all the way through. But I mean, Magic's changed a lot in that time. You know, it was more music, less talk when I started. I think there was a point at the beginning where it was like 8 in a row or 10 in a row, and it was just really laid back. But it was always just lovely. Like, it was just a really nice feel to it. And obviously, you know, it's moved on progressively all the way through as time has gone on, and you know, it's you know, a different thing now. It's a different brand now, but it's been awesome, Magic. Yeah, it just feels like it's always felt like the right radio station for me. I don't know what it is. Like, I just always felt like, oh yeah, Magic's. I don't know. It just feels like my thing. Like, yeah,
that's lovely to hear that, though. It is.
Yeah, it's nice. It's yeah, it's just been good all the way through. Sheena Mason, who, you know, it's mad when you think. I mean, I think it's my 11th year with Magic now, and you know, Sheena's been there the whole way through. And you almost get to the point where you think, oh, I can't imagine my life without Sheena in it. Like, she's just always there, like, in a good way. Like, it's been brilliant. Tony Morey, and now with Rachel, of course, as well. And you know, things have moved on, and there's tons of content now across all the different platforms, and some really clever ways of sort of knowing where the audience is and what they want at different times of the day. I love the introduction of the 4 till 7 show with Tom and Kat, which I think is a really great addition. And there's just been some really good, there's a great buzz going on at Magic at the moment, which is lovely. You know, really, really good people to work. I've been so lucky with the people. Like, it's just been so lovely, most of it.
And do you do your shows from East Yorkshire, or do you go to London to them?
A bit of a mix. I mean, I've gone a bit overboard with the home studio now. You know, I moved house a couple of years ago and just thought, right, I'm spending a lot of time in here, so I need to just make this nice. So, and it's got the Magic settings on the mic, and so it's pretty much, yeah. So it pretty much is quite a good, you know, I don't think you could probably tell much difference between here and London, but, you know, I'm still in London, as well, which is nice. It's nice to be in the buildings as well.
Look, let's not forget, you know, you do things, it's still Magic now, Virgin Radio Chill, sometimes Channel 103 in Jersey, Bay Easy, Malta, Radio News Hub as well. Are you still the content editor and reader for that?
No, I did that for 6 months, I think it was.
Right, okay.
And basically, I thought I could cope with the amount of stuff I was doing, and actually I couldn't, because it was just too much. It was just too much. But you know, it was a good experience, and it was a nice thing to go back to some of that journalism stuff again, which I hadn't done since Neptune, and good people, like good people to work with, but just doing too much. Probably, you know, work-life balance. Maybe I need to sometimes watch a bit, I think.
Yeah.
And probably still need to a little bit. But
do you know the one thing since I've left the industry is it is so nice to now have a job where I can switch off, because what people don't understand, unless they've been in radio, whatever, you know, presenter, producer, boss, whatever it is, you live that job 24/7. And there's no escaping that, especially, but as a presenter, you're forever looking for that link.
Yeah, 100%.
Whatever, school pickups, cooking the tea, watching a program. You are, I remember David Lloyd saying to me, you are a human sponge. You suck up everything. And that is so true. And that's why now I kind of, it's nice that at 5 o'clock I just switch off and I couldn't care till the following morning.
What do you do now, John?
I work for the police now.
Okay.
Not the band.
I fill in for Sting. Do you find now, like you say, you can switch off at 5 o'clock, which is brilliant, but do you still find yourself absorbing life and experiences and stuff and going, I'll use that? Like, is it just so entrenched in you to observe things and take things in?
Do you know what I would love to do? And unfortunately, she's in the house at the moment and she's just probably chilling out with a glass of red wine, but I would love to bring my wife in for a couple of reasons. Firstly, to meet you because you seem like a lovely human being. I think she'd really like you.
Thank you.
And secondly, I think she would tell you that I'm really annoying because I still try and hit a vocal if I hear a song. I still do it. And occasionally, what I'll do is a song will be playing and I will hit the vocal with a bit of Viking FM production. I'll just go,
oh, really?
I'll just go, Viking, and I'll kiss that vocal. Because you just can't help it, can you? You can't.
So that part of it is entrenched in you. Yes. That's going to stay forever, right? Of course. How do you think you've changed then since you've stopped doing it full time? Like, do you think, are there benefits? Are there not benefits? Like, do you find that you're more relaxed or?
I think I'm less bitter towards the industry because I think I became quite bitter because I ended up working for the BBC towards the end and opportunities just weren't happening for me, even though the editors were saying, we would love to put you on air full time. Unfortunately, you're not quite the person we're looking for. So I found that tough. So I became bitter. So I enjoy the fact that I'm not as bitter towards the industry. So now I can kind of reflect and just remember the happy times. And also, we're recording this on the 21st of May. And it was Radar this week. Or was it the week before? I can't remember.
Yeah, last week.
I didn't know. And I don't miss that stress of Radar. Do you get stressed with Radar? Because for me, I've had nights in tears because we've gone, because it's so painful, isn't it?
Well, and I mean, breakfast as well. I mean, that's high pressure, like in so many ways. I've never done breakfast and I admire you for doing that because it's full on, like in every way that's full on. Like whether, you're getting up at that time in the morning and you've got to haul yourself in and the amount of content that you're getting through and the pressure that's there and then Radar on top and contracts on top of that. I mean, if you sometimes when you break it down, you're like, this is a bit nuts. This is kind of chaos, isn't it? Yeah. Really? Every 3 months.
I was talking to somebody on the team that I work with now, and they're an amazing team, really, really nice people. And they were talking about my previous occupation. And I was saying that, when I first started at Viking, I got a 3-year contract, which I'm sure now is not heard of. And towards the end, I was signing year contracts. And I was explaining to this lady in the office, I was saying that in radio, as soon as you sign that contract, and this is getting very deep, so I apologize, but as soon as you sign that contract, you start shitting yourself because the clock's ticking until the next, and it's awful, isn't it?
I had somebody, an ex-partner, say to me at one point, like, you're fine for 6 months. And then the other 6 months, no, forget it. And it's like, this is hard, isn't it? And in terms of planning a life, like you think, God, you can barely plan a holiday, let alone, something like some sort of financial planning or something. And it's like, how am I meant to plan that? You can barely plan a weekend off. So it's hard. It's really hard. And it's interesting to know what kind of changes you might have seen or felt in yourself. And I think that the point you brought up earlier as well about sort of there being no support for people is a really, really good point, because there's some difficult stuff to go through, isn't there? And to work through, and feelings and emotions that come into it. And it's such a personal thing, like you said earlier, people that really have an affinity to a radio station and it's part of them. And, it's everything, isn't it? It's the financial, it's the impact of that's what you've done your whole life and been passionate about. There's so many elements to it. So I don't know quite what the answer is. You almost need somebody who understands. So I guess if we can talk to each other about those kind of experiences, maybe it helps as well. But it's a tough one.
It is tough, and I don't think it's ever worth forgetting that what we what you do and what I used to do and what many people that I've been listening to have done or still do is we do something to be liked. We want to be liked by the listener, so the radar goes up. We want to be liked by our colleagues, so that they're not bad mouthing us. We want to be liked by management. And it's all about just being liked, isn't it? It's about being, and it's been accepted in different markets. And you can't have an off day where people don't like you, because that's it. You could lose your audience, and it's just hard work, isn't it? You come home, and when you're in a bad mood, and your partner's like, "What's wrong?" You're like, "I just need to be an arsehole for half an hour." It's hard.
Yeah, and especially, I mean, like I say, especially doing breakfast, I think you're really putting yourself on the line with that, big city breakfast show. That's tough going.
Oh, yeah.
Do you ever get confused for Paul Hayes from BBC Radio Norfolk?
No, I don't think I do. No. But I have heard of the other Paul Hayes. I don't think I've heard him on air.
Have you not?
Yeah, I forgot all about. Yeah, there's a Paul Hayes on Digital Spy, which always freaks me out, because I'm like, oh God, it's not me. I don't know who it is, but it's not me. It might be him.
It probably is. I just want to ask you a question, actually, Paul, because you've had such a varied career. I mean, Dubai, Canada, Heart, and then your dream to be on Magic, as you just talked about. I'm trying to work out what's been the highlight of your career so far.
Yeah, that's a really hard one, isn't it? God, that is actually quite hard, because I'd say Canada was a highlight in the sense that it was a great radio station, and it was doing something a bit different, and it was, on a personal level, a really great thing to do. I'm still proud of getting to Heart in 2004, and to be fair, I did feel really thrilled to get past the 10-year mark with Magic, which was last year, I think, and that felt like a really special thing.
I always ask my guests, who would you like to hear on Crunch and Roll to have their own episode?
Well, Richard Park would be definitely up there as probably my number one for that. I mean, the stories would be absolutely incredible, wouldn't they? And so many other people have talked about him. So yeah, it'd be lovely to hear Richard on. And Harriet would be a really good one. Harriet Scott, who of course hosts Magic Breakfast and has done so much amazing stuff. And I think is just one of the best presenters on the radio, full stop. And of course, I think started at Viking as well. So Harriet would be a really good one. And my mate Greg Burns as well, who has done lots of really good stuff in the UK with Capital and Heart and stand-up comedy, and now in Toronto in Canada as well. So lots of good stories, I'm sure, from Greg. So I think those would be really good to hear.
Well, some big hitters there. We'll put them on the list. Well, Paul, thank you so much for being on Crunch and Roll. It's been amazing to have you on. Thank you.
Oh, it's been a real pleasure, John. Thank you so much.
Has it been as painful as you thought?
No, probably not, actually. No, it's quite nice once you get into the flow, isn't it? And you're just having a chat and nice reminiscing about some of this stuff as well. And again, it's that thing of like shared experience, isn't it? It's nice to chat to somebody who, knows exactly where you're coming from with a lot of the stuff. And so it's been great. Therapy. Do
you know what? I have an advantage over everybody who listens to this episode of Crunch and Roll, to all the episodes. And that advantage is that I can see your face. And I what I've really enjoyed over the last hour and however long it has been is that a memory has come back to you, and you've kind of gone, oh God, yeah, I remember. And that's the beauty of of just thinking back over your career, those memories coming back, which bring a smile to your face.
Yeah, it's when you start writing it down as well, which is always different, isn't it, when you write it down compared to just thinking about it. But you start writing down like the list, and it's like, whoa, it's quite a long time ago, some of this, isn't it? And it's been, it's been brilliant when you look at it written down, really. It's been so many highlights.
Do you think that person who started on Neptune ever dreamt of being on, national radio like Magic and being on Heart?
I think dreamt of it, but I don't necessarily think, I was ambitious, but I don't necessarily think you ever think it's going to go that way. So it's amazing, really, the way it has all worked out, and probably you don't take a step back often enough to think, oh wow, this has really been good. You probably should do that a bit more, really. But I never. That thing, isn't it? You want it and you're trying for it, and you have so many knockbacks over the years, and you don't think it's ever actually going to happen, and then it sort of does. And it's been lovely to have almost a second shot at it, I guess, in the UK as well, to have sort of, ended with Heart and then to come back with Magic. And it took a long time to get back to Magic, but been lovely to have that sort of second shot chance of being back in the UK with it as well.
Well, it's been absolutely wonderful to have you on. If you could please do us the favour of taking us away with the end credits.
You've been listening to Crunch and Roll with me, Paul Hayes. Subscribe on your favourite podcast app to get every new episode as soon as they drop. Crunch and Roll is a 969 media production presented by John Fox and produced by Simon Smith.
Oh, yeah.